Musicians' Viewpoints. This podcast is by and for local musicians in all localities. I'm your host, Kevin Ronco. Hey, this is Kevin Ronco, and welcome to another episode of Musicians' Viewpoints. And today we have David Whitaker, who lives in Corvallis here, with same town I live in. And I did play in a few different groups with him over the last few years, especially before the pandemic. Those groups were Arlene, Studley Kitchen, and the Burdens. And David is still doing shows with Arlene, so anyone in this area, check them out. At the end of this podcast, we'll share a sound clip of David singing a song that he wrote some 50 years ago. Still working on that one. Sounding great. And I will waste no more time. Let's get to the interview with David Whitaker. Enjoy. Hey, this is Musicians' Viewpoints, and today I have a great guest, David Whitaker. My name's Kevin Ronco, and he's been very patient with technical problems this morning, mostly because we saw a Pink Floyd tribute band last night, and waking up slowly today. Amazing band. You were there at the Whiteside Theater last night?
Yes, I was, and I actually thought I saw you. I wasn't sure though.
Probably. I went to say hi to Alan briefly, and then I think I saw you talking to him after I had gone back to my seat. But
yeah,
I was trying to not have to go to the bathroom. The lines were really long, and so I was kind of like, I think I just need to stay sitting.
Yeah, they only have really one bathroom in there, and there's just two stalls. So
yeah,
they talked about making more. So
yeah. We went to Sky High before going there, so I was kind of like in that in between point of. But anyway, they were amazing.
Oh yeah,
I thought.
Yeah, that was probably the best. I've seen a few other cover bands and Pink Floyd cover band about 10 years ago, and they were good too. But this one was that was amazing. Had a great time.
Cool. Yeah, I did too. I had kind of underestimated the tribute band, but now I am a convert to that experience.
Yeah, especially since the regular band doesn't want to play together anymore. So this is the best that we got right now.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. I think the timing is interesting in that a lot of these groups they just can't do it anymore. So the tribute band really makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was let's see, I saw the Zappa cover band, a tribute band. It was a little about half a year ago, and they were good too. They actually had a member of the Frank Zappa, I think it was Ike Willis, that was actually in the band. So they just played around him, and it was great.
Cool. Yeah, I saw a Zappa tribute band a long time ago. I remember the drummer was mad about something. It was kind of distracting, but anyway, the thing last night was over the top. I mean, they do the entire Dark Side of the Moon album, and then and that chick singing the Great Gig in the Sky knocked it out of the park, and
yeah, she was great.
And then they go on and do stuff from Animals, and I think Wish You Were Here, and then some of that really early stuff. They did Fearless, all of it. It was just amazing. Anyway, so the point of this podcast, though, is for me to ask you questions about you. So we'll get to that. So first question, tell me about the first band that you played in.
The first band that I played in was in early high school. I was in, I want to date myself here, the early 70s. And that was pretty much four guys that just hung out together growing up. And each of us had musician guitars. I mean, the drummer had we started out with, the drummer had a couple of cans of old Folger coffee cans, and he was banging on that. And I had these little maracas. I wasn't even playing the guitar, and we had one guy who was actually playing the guitar, and then everybody else just kind of followed him, and he played a bunch of Beatles songs. And then, and this was the first year, and then after a while, two of us started taking lessons from the same guy, and started learning how to play the guitar. So I started playing guitar when I was 9, and then took a break for about 4 years. It was hanging around the house because it was my brother's guitar, who was 7 years older than me. And he actually was a piano player. He was real studious when he started playing. And so I hung around and had a lot of music growing up. My mom and dad were both big music fans. Mom loved the big band sound, and my dad loved country and Western. And then my brother had classical, jazz, rock, and all that combined. And so I just had a lot of music around me. And I loved it. And so that was the first band. And we really didn't go very far. I think made it into the sophomore year of high school and then split up. But I had already got the music fever within me. And then a few years later, other bands started happening. This was all in the Bay Area. I lived in Daly City for a while. Then after high school, I started I wanted to be a musician, and really focused on studying and taking classes at community college and playing with friends. And another band formed a little bit after that. We actually started playing gigs and got pretty good. That band was called Stillwater. I believe there's a movie about a band called Stillwater that they made. And then from there, just took it all the way up till I met my wife, my then wife, and then music kind of faded away, and I got a full-time job that was about my mid 20s. So music was around, and then full-time job, raising family and kids, stuff like that.
I understand that. Having a full-time job myself definitely can distract from things you really would prefer to be doing.
Yeah. And then raising kids too, and owning a home and having a mortgage and bills and other things kind of piled up. So guitar was always hanging around. I would play it for a bit at times, and but I was really focused on being a rock star all the way up till. But there was that other thing saying, well, I also want to have a family, want to have kids, and this and that. And at the time, you'd think about, people were able to do that and also be able to perform and play music at the same time. But I had my mindset going, well, I have a full-time job. And worked for a tech company in Silicon Valley for 25 years. And then what happened after that was, I get a little story about this. Near the end of my tenure as a tech, I got laid off after 25 years. They massive layoffs in 2009 after the crash. Then right about the last 2 or 3 years, the company had all these things going on, special things going on, and we actually formed a rock band within the company, and we would play at all these little benefits and stuff like that within the company. The company was pretty vast. We had about maybe 11, 12,000 employees at the time, and I got back into it, playing with the band at work. And I said, oh, this is great. I just got a new guitar, and this was when the marriage was starting to go south, and then I got laid off, and we split up, me and my wife, and went on to say, well, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? And I decided I would start teaching music and get back into the fold. So this was the late 2008, 2009. And ever since then, it's been pretty much just music around and performing and teaching and whatnot.
Cool. Yeah, it's interesting how you can, I'm kind of going through a similar period of like, what am I going to do next? So I can totally identify with that.
Yeah, yeah.
Just life throws things at you and you have to pay attention. So, I get that.
Yeah.
Cool though. You found your way through.
Yeah, I did. That was one of the muses too. I painted. I did a lot of art, and in high school, I did a lot of photography, which kind of helped me get through high school. The last 2 years, I spent probably 70% of the time in the dark room. Remember dark rooms?
Yes. My
And
first, yeah. I studied graphic arts technology. I know darkrooms. Yes.
yeah, and I don't. There aren't very many anymore. I think somebody was. I talked to somebody a few years ago up here, and they said, "Oh, I'm opening up a darkroom." Oh, that's great. And but photography was when I got out of high school. I got a scholarship for the Academy of Art in San Francisco, and I did a semester of that, and then I just got burnt out from just going to any kind of school, and I didn't want to go do any school anymore. And that's when I had the dream of being the rock star. And then there was like a 7 year gap between that and meeting my wife, and then boom.
Wow. Interesting how life can take you in directions, and
Yeah,
just got to be patient with it sometimes.
yeah. Sit back and breathe and see it come at you.
Exactly.
A lot easier to do it that way than to try to control and manipulate things. And it's hard to do. It's kind
That's
of
for sure.
wait back and say, this is the natural thing. Music's always been there.
Yeah, same for me. It's just a nice thing to have in your back pocket. Next question. What was a band that you played in that you really enjoyed? I'm sure you enjoyed all of them, but one that really stands out in your mind.
There was there were quite a few of them I enjoyed playing, and I never really could say that the one's the top. Me and my son plays the drums,
Hmm.
and his friend played the bass. And right after the separation, um, I would go over to the house that I used to own. Actually, I still owned it. We were separate, but we didn't divorce and have all the finalized stuff. But I would go there, and me and my wife were still in really, we still are today. It was just pretty good friends. And but I'd go over and hang out, and somehow or another, my son, he had a drum kit there, and John, the bass player, my son William, and my John, the bass player, they were friends, and said, let's play some music. And so we just started getting together, and we started doing some covers, the Who songs and stuff. We all love the Who, so but
Cool.
you have to have for playing the Who songs, you really have to have a singer that sounds somewhat like Roger Daltrey. And there was nobody in the band that sounded. I would try it. The bass player would try it, but it was just too. You got to have a real good energy to be with singing to do that.
Yeah, and he has a lot of
So
charisma too.
yeah, Al, the Who, just amazing band. I love the Who.
Yeah, me too.
So what happened was I started writing songs for the band, and eventually we started getting gigs and really formulating a good uh, rapport with our with my original stuff, and I started to grow a little more in the songwriting realm. And that was a band called DB&J, David, Bill, and John, which is kind of a play off of PB&J, the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So we got gigs, and that was really great. And that lasted for about 4 years. And I loved that. I just knew playing with my son and John, who was hanging around the family for at least 10 years before we started playing together was amazing. And but that kind of went away. John moved to Los Angeles, which made it almost impossible to play. We were in the Bay Area.
Uh-huh.
That's the time I was living in the East Bay. And then that kind of, we split up from there. I still played with William for a while, and then that's when I moved up here. So that was a good marquee band for me. I played in about 3 or 4 other bands also at the same time. Sugar Ponies was one. Gary's band, Gary Adler had a band, and I played with a gentleman called Dane Ori. It was just me and him. And I had circulated around the open mic groups, open mic areas in the Bay Area. So I would go to like 2 or 3 open mics a week and just make friends and make connections with that. And eventually, when I left the Bay Area, 300 or 400 friends of mine were all musicians, and I would just go to the open mics and jam with people if they wanted the guitarist to come up. And I even hosted a few open mics at the Ireland's 32 in San Francisco. When the host was on vacation, he asked me to come and do the hosting there. And those were all great experiences, to host open mic and then perform, and then have players come up and ask if you need somebody to kind of play a lead, because then I was able to really do a lot of listening. I think it's important for musicians to not only play, but learn how to listen and hear what's going on, and try to move in the really complement what they're doing and whatnot. So I turned from a kind of a thrashy, wanting to be the leadest guitar player, to one that just kind of laid back and just tried to add as much energy to the song as possible without, making it my song.
Right.
I
totally
mean?
appreciate, yeah. That learning to listen is always something that you think you have it mastered, but no, think again. It's always something to work on.
Yeah, it's very powerful.
Yep.
And then moving up here, so now the band that I'm in, one band, and then plus I'm doing my own stuff, the Arlene band, which was we named that. Little story behind that is I moved up here, and then I went to an open mic, and I met 4 people that night at the open mic that were like connectors for me. Marilyn Jordan and Steve were there, and I started talking with them and talking about what my experience with music was, and they invited me over to, they had a gig somewhere the next week, and they invited me to the gig. So I showed up at the gig, and then we just immediately had this rapport going and started to start performing together. And then there was someone else that I also met, and she was giving parties all the time, and she invited me to some of the parties, and the parties had musicians, and her boyfriend at the time was also a musician, and he knew a lot of people. So we would get together, and then suddenly, boom, I'm meeting all these people and making connections there. So that was really, moving into Corvallis, that was just a really precious and wonderful, nurturing time for me to really expand in this area up here.
Cool. Yeah, I enjoy that.
I'm not sure if I answered the question.
You did, yeah. And Arlene too. I did get to work with you guys for a little while, and that was cool.
Yeah.
Great group.
Sat in, and William, who my son, moves up here too, and then he sat in with us a few times too. And he's over in Sweet Home now, doing the 40-hour a week thing, and so he's. We still get together and perform and play music.
Cool. Yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah.
And you guys do connect with the audience, and it's a wonderful thing. So on to the next question. What was your worst gigmare? if you had one.
Yeah, I saw these questions before, and I really contemplated this and thought, well, I would say there was DB&J. We had a house party show once, and we showed up with everything except for the microphones. And so here's a three-piece rock band without microphones. And the guy that the owner of the house says, what are we going to do? Because our microphones were in a studio that was about another hour and a half drive. So we'd have to drive up to Oakland, get the mics, and come back. And we had already done that once and got everything. So he had this old reel-to-reel, early 1960s reel-to-reel, and it came with a microphone. It was a really terrible microphone. And so we stuck that on the mic stand and wrapped it around because it wouldn't really fit. It was, I guess, one of those dynamic mics. So that was, we're singing into that, and the crowd was very appreciative, but they understood that we plugged it into an amp, and it sounded okay. That was one. I guess the can't really say there was early on. There were times when late in the 70s where there was a lot of the heavy drugs going around, and we was in a band that we had, our first set was really great, and then we went backstage and got a little plastered with some of this funny stuff, this funny white stuff, and got back on stage and sounded just absolutely terrible. And that was a turning point for me to not indulge in that kind of stuff, which I'd only been doing for a couple of weeks, but it was just there in the late 70s.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
And, I would say that afterwards, because the crowd at the first set, we had the crowd jumping the second set, everybody went back upstairs. I go, oh, what's going on? It says, everybody's off time. Nobody's connected at all. Why did we do this in the break? I guess because somebody was throwing that stuff around. So, and we just lost focus and no connection. So when the bands aren't connecting, when we're not connecting musically on that level, things can kind of go wrong. I think maybe it's karma, and so you have to really kind of be, or for me, I have to really be focused a little bit more and attentive to what's surrounding me, attentive to the crowd, and that. And when you're not, and when you unplug with that, and attentive to your own sense of musicianship, that's part of it. Musicianship isn't just playing the music, it's also being aware of your surroundings and really being attuned to what works at that time. You can have a whole idea of what it's going to be like, but when you get there, there's going to be variables and things are going to kind of shift and change, and you're not going to, because you have these expectations about how it should be. So the idea is to break those expectations, kind of detach a little bit from them, and just kind of go with the flow.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I like, I don't mind taking the edge off, maybe have a beer or two, but
oh yeah,
anything beyond that, you're kind of,
yeah, something that yeah, beer will relax you and you're still okay. But I mean, if you get into this headspace, and I noticed that every time I would do that, even in practices, not the white stuff, that went away a lot. That was a long time ago. I'm talking about the stuff you put up your nose,
right?
But,
which is come back into style, I guess, from what I understand.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know why you would do that.
No, me either. Anything that is physically addictive, yeah, I'm not interested in it.
Yeah.
So next question. When did you pick up an instrument and how old were you? I think you already answered this, but
I was 9. I played for about, my brother brought this book. It's called the Alfred's Basic Guitar Method, and he got there with his guitar, but he wasn't really interested in the guitar. I think what he did was, way back in the 60s, we would have these things called you'd go door to door and sell Christmas cards. And I think that's what he did. He went door to door. He'd sell these Christmas cards, and then they had these books, these prize books that you would once you sold enough, then you can pick something from the book. And he picked the guitar, and it sat there. And I'm going, oh, that's really cool. I really wanted to play the saxophone when I was 9 years old, but there were no saxophones available, and my parents didn't really want to get me into it. I didn't really talk to them about it, but there was the guitar there. So then I put that down after about 4 months. But I did learn a few chords, and I learned how to play Jingle Bells and a few other things, maybe Claire de Lune, the really easy stuff. And I learned how to read music when I was 9, but then I thought, this is too hard. I want to go out and play. And then when around, I think I was 13, my memory's a little blank on it, but then when I was 13, then I started taking the lessons.
Cool. Next question. What do you think about your local music scene?
This it's getting better. Last night was fun. We got to see a band that was really rock. Yeah, it felt good. It felt like when we got up to the stage, especially near the end, it felt really good to get that sense again. I used to go to Winterland and Fillmore and all those places in San Francisco and have that sense. Venues, that's important. What's happening is, so before the pandemic, we had a few venues that were consistent, but they kind of went into, we were closed down, and so then they kind of reestablished themselves. We had the Imagine Coffee, which you could go and see music. They stopped doing that. There was Cloud and Kelly's, which turned into 3 or 4 different names, and they stopped playing music. But then we have Common Fields.
Yes.
And the Old World Deli are now bringing in Old World. They redid their stage. That's great. So music is being presented there. Yeah. And the White Side, of course, that's a little bit bigger venue. So
that was nice. I was
think of any other places, but really, it's just important to get the venues going. And Bombs Away, too.
Yeah. Yep.
And they're doing jazz jams and funk jams and also open mics too. So I like the open mics because that gets people who haven't played to get them out there. And over at the community center, there's an open mic on Fridays. They had one last night. Of course, we were at Whiteside, so we couldn't attend. And then they're also at the college. They are building this creative arts center. I don't know if you drive down past King's and go to the other side, you can see them building it. The Patricia Valayan Reiser Center for the Creative Arts.
Yes.
Which should be finished sometime in the late summer or early fall. I think that's the schedule.
Oh, wow. It's coming right up.
Yeah, well, that's what I heard. Depending, hopefully they're on schedule, but it's going to happen, and that's really exciting. I think the gentleman who's kind of overseeing that is Bob Santelli, who's done a lot of work with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and the center up in Seattle, and he's pretty well connected with the music scene and trying to get projects moving along. He does an album club, the OSU album club, once a month too, and that's kind of fun. They discuss classic albums and talk and go through it and listen to that. So, but when I moved here, I really liked the music scene. There was because I was a teacher, so I'm going to all these music places and saying, I want to teach through your class. And at the time they had Grace Winds. And then it kind of closed down. I was, okay, we took a hit there, but we still have 3 other music stores in the city, and then there was one in Philomath that they moved to Albany. So the open mics and the jazz jams and the blues jam, those are great. But I would love to see more. Of that. So this is Corvallis is a real kind of a cultural place, and really enjoy the other scenes too, the art scene. community in general.
I would agree. It's strange in a way here too, I feel like, but like it could be a lot more than it is. And there's certainly more talent to offer people than what we're allowed to, for venues, like you're saying. But yeah, maybe it's just the effect of the pandemic that makes me think that way. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're coming out of it now.
yeah, I think so.
This last couple of months, and people are really excited about. I also teach Tai Chi classes, and I have the most students I've ever had now. Well, I teach at the community center,
Oh, cool.
and the other day I'm going, wow, people are signing up now, and they're because the community center was ready to go right about the time of the shutdown. The new community they expanded, but nobody was going. So, but now everybody's hearing about it, so there's more involvement with that.
Cool. So, what do you think about musicians who play more benefits instead of charging a professional fee? Or is that even a question that makes any sense?
Yeah, I saw that one. It kind of changes. I think that with there's some performances that you can play for free, but there's others that I think the musicians have to have some sort of a feedback or somehow or another. That's to me, it's more. Yeah, it's kind of a hard question.
Yeah.
I've been both. I've played for free and not get any feedback at all, and you just sit in the background and just play, and there's a little tip jar there, and even that gets ignored unless you kind of notice, kind of make people pay attention to that. Say, hey, there's a little tip jar over here, and if you have a good rapport with the audience and you be able to blend that in, and they'll respond to that. On the other hand, if you're starting out, you don't want to just keep doing it over and over again. When we were going to the place in Lebanon, there was a hot dog place. I can't remember the name, Downtown Dog. And
Yes, Downtown Dog.
We were doing a once a month gig there, and that was okay. But the thing is, it takes a lot of time for musicians to not just to prepare for a gig, but then also set everything up and then break it down and all that. So we're not just playing, we're also being our own roadies, and that's a lot of time in that. So we're looking for appreciation in some way, and it's our time too. So
yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, freebies are. I don't know. I've kind of made maybe my ideas. Well, I'm not going to do freebies anymore. Maybe if it's a benefit. Yeah, it's for a good cause. Yeah. The Grange, I played at the Grange. That was the last gig I think we did. And
with Marilyn?
With Marilyn, yeah, that was kind of a freebie in a way. And he didn't really get it. Although I got a few plants out of it. Somebody had a plant stand, and so I got house plants. But other than that, I don't have any. I don't think that person's that person should really look at how they're performing. If they're really serious about it, then you need to move on.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, it's also the driving. You can tie up a full day, for a gig, and
yeah, and the mental preparation too. If I got a gig that night, I'm thinking about it right when I get up. I go, okay, I get tonight.
Yeah, it does.
Preparing for that, your whole day circulates around it.
Yeah, it definitely changes your whole mindset for the entire day. So you can't get any of your house stuff done or any of that stuff. You're all about the gig. So yeah, you need something to compensate for that. I agree. Next question. What did you do during the pandemic?
I I took it upon myself to really study the saxophone more. I've been playing the saxophone since the mid 20s, when I could actually afford to buy my own saxophone by then. And then he said, okay, so why? I've devoted about 2 hours a day to practicing and pulling stuff offline and just getting the chops down a little bit. So it's more like a saxophone thing than a guitar thing. Musically, that's what I did. A little bit of writing, and geez, we got together on Zoom. Me and Marilyn got together on Zoom for a while and talked about what we were doing. So we kept that creative flow going. We said, "What are you doing about the sax? What are you doing? What are you writing?" I think I took a writing class with Matt Megan, who is based out of Portland. And then eventually, after about 4 or 5 months after the initial lockdown in March, me and Marilyn actually got together at a distance outside the house in my backyard, and we would perform, and not perform, but we just would practice our songs. So kept that going, kept the fire going. That's what I did with the music.
Cool. Yeah, I remember getting together with the Burdens in your backyard.
Oh yeah, we did that too. Yeah.
That's
And that was fun. And I remember walking around the neighborhood and then talking afterwards to the neighbors and asking if we were too loud, and everybody was appreciative. So I really liked what you were doing. It was fun to hear music. So people were hungry, and the music was I guess it was healing in a way to play it and to have people hear it. So.
Yeah, it gave me hope that we were gonna, bust this back open at some point.
Yeah, move out of it.
Yeah, exactly. Next question. What band blew your mind the first time you heard them?
That would be the first concert I ever went to, and that would have been Frank Zappa and the Mothers in 1973. No, there's more. There's more after that. The Who were amazing. Joe Walsh. When I first saw Joe Walsh, I didn't really know, except for he had this one hit coming out. This is like near the end of my senior year in high school, and Joe Walsh was playing Winterland. And a buddy of mine says, "Hey, let's go see Joe Walsh." I said, "Why not?" Rocky Mountain Way was the big hit at the time, and I was just like, "Whoa!" Got up there again. When I would go to concerts, I'd get right up front. I was a photography guy, so I get my camera up and I take pictures, and I wanted to really see them. So I was surprised with Joe Walsh, but I was blown away by Frank Zappa.
Okay.
I got right up in front. First time I'd ever been at a big rock show, and he comes walking out. He's right in front of me. I'm going, "Whoa, Frank Zappa!" And we were expecting. This was at the time we didn't have social. There was no internet, and the only music news that we knew about would be whatever they printed in Rolling Stone. And so you go read Rolling Stone magazine and find out what was going on, or the newspaper at the time, it was the pink section in the San Francisco Chronicle, and they'd show what bands were coming, and there would be a little review about it. So we thought that we were going to see Frank Zappa with Mark Volman and Flo and Eddie. That's what they were called, the guys from the Turtles. And so that would be that act. And when he came on stage and they didn't show up, and he has his band, the apostrophe / overnight sensation band with George Duke and Ian Underwood and Ruth and that band, I'm going, "Oh, this is a different band." And then they just came on and they just started doing their overnight sensation album, the whole album. I think they did it. That just came out, and we didn't even have that album. So wow, just amazing. And I was just amazed. And I was just like a paradigm shift for me in terms of I want to do this all the time. And then I think a month later I went and saw Jeff Beck, and then eventually the Grateful Dead, Doobie Brothers, Allman Brothers, the Who, all those bands were just lined up one after another that year. I became wanted to go see band junkie.
Yeah. Thing to do. Yeah. I saw Joe Walsh once. I get the Joe Walsh And I
Yeah,
didn't see Zappa or any of those. But yeah. But what I liked about Joe Walsh is he's so relaxed, but yet he hits hard. I mean,
yeah, yeah. He was definitely. Yeah, I didn't know any of his other songs at the time. And the next day, I went out and bought his album. And then I bought the first album he put out, and then the Barnstorm albums, and up to that point. And then I saw him again a few times later when he came around too.
cool.
Oh, the last waltz. I was in the audience for the last
Oh, you
waltz.
were? Wow.
Yeah, that was a blow away too.
Actually there. Wow.
Yeah, and because we didn't know who was going to, we knew the band was going to be there, Dylan was going to be there, and there was a few others. You know, Clapton was going to be there, but there were surprises in that concert. Van Morrison shows up,
Hmm.
Neil Diamond, which there was a connection. I think the band had played a couple of gigs with Neil Diamond, and I was like, well, Neil Diamond and the band, kind of. Um,
And it
Muddy
worked.
Waters, yeah, Muddy Waters was great.
Hmm.
Neil Young and Joni Mitchell. Wow, I mean, talk about an all-star lineup,
Yeah.
man.
I've seen that movie many times. Yeah.
Yeah, you can actually see me in the movie. I have this huge,
Really?
big old. My hair is all afroed, and you can see me at one point where I think Dylan's turning around to look at Robbie Robertson, and he kind of leans back, and you can see my head for a second. Then you see me put a camera in front of my face. So I took a lot of pictures of it. I have a ton of pictures of that show.
Wow.
At some point, maybe I should. I was thinking about there's another buddy of mine standing next to me who's also taking pictures, and I always have this idea that maybe we could get together and maybe get those published.
You
Some of
should.
the pictures I took of that, I took pictures of the Who, Zappa, Allman Brothers, Grateful Dead, a few others too.
Hmm.
In the early '70s, early to mid to late '70s.
Wow. That sounds like a treasure
Yeah,
trove.
yeah.
Wow. That's really amazing. Yeah, you need to release those. Um, Next question, though. How do you see the future of local live music?
I think I answered that question.
I think
Local
so. Yeah.
live, as well spread out. Of course, we're not going to get big name bands in Corvallis. So you have the Eugene, where you can go down and see great bands, and then Portland, of course, that's where the real big acts can
Hmm.
go.
Yeah.
So as long as the venues can stay open and people are being supported by, or those are being supported by people, and the real music scene, not some of the stuff that you hear, like the top 10 in Spotify. I really don't know what that music's about. I'm not even quite sure if that's music sometimes. They don't sound like songs to me. They sound like they're kind of bringing, it's my opinion about some of the more, the music that's being processed. Feels like it's processed music and there's not a lot of depth to it. There's not a lot of soul to it. So if we can keep the soul going and people, the songwriters, singer-songwriters and bands really wanting to play music that's pure of their heart, then that'll just keep going on its own. The flow of that'll just keep going and expanding in those ways. Being careful of not making it a business. I think there's a really great book written by Victor Wooten called The
Oh,
Music Lesson. Are you familiar with that?
I have his video making music. Um, so it's probably a similar kind of lesson in there. Probably. I mean, but what were you saying though? Yeah, I'm very familiar with Victor Wooten. Though.
Yeah. He talks about the music business, and he thinks that's kind of an oxymoron in a way. And I can kind of agree with him on that, because when you start sticking more business and then you start looking at, well, these are the trends in business and blah blah blah, this and that, and so that's when you're looking at it from that perspective. But from a musical perspective, it's the other way around. It's more like what created, treated as an artist, treated as a creative process,
Mm,
and not try to work its way into how much money can I make
right.
as a performer, because you have to forget that.
Yeah, because you're not going to make enough to make a living anyway, probably. So.
Well, some people can,
Yeah, yeah,
if they're really pure at heart and can work it in the way where you got to do some business.
you do.
Otherwise,
Yeah,
promote it. You do have to promote it. Let people know where to go and all that, and the process of getting it out there, listening to Spotify or the other stream, the Apple streams. But don't
but
get
yeah,
lost
yeah,
in that. And because if you're listening to a true person that feels the music inside them, is going to want to find the musicians that are really treating it with that respect of that the true flow.
the love of the music itself, and
Yeah,
the dedication to the creative process, and the what it takes to play an instrument, and be devoted to that. Yeah, I would agree, and I'm starting to get back into that on that level. So I like that question, and I love your answer on that.
yeah,
Um,
cool.
so last question, I'm going to combine these two. How do you go about getting gigs, and who does that for the band or bands?
Um, yeah, well, before the pandemic, I was the one that was getting these gigs with a few things and looking forward to bringing more of that. That's where you got to kind of work it a little bit. I'm not as skilled as some people are. There's a few bands out here that are getting a lot of gigs, and that's where I have to hone my skills a little more and go out and talk with people. But how do you get gigs? We kind of wait for them. Steve knows a few people, and that's how we got our gig on Friday. We have a gig coming up at the Lynn Benton Community College on Friday,
Oh,
which is
cool.
our first gig for Arlene in 3 years, and that'll be an acoustic show, all acoustic, no microphones even. And then
Yeah,
from
I've
there,
played there. Yep.
yeah, and then from there, I'll have to do that too. A little bit of changing in perspective of how maybe I approach it. I'd like to play at the Old World Deli in Common
Mm.
Fields. Let's see what that's like. So that question is still I have to work on that a little bit.
I
I
like that.
certainly,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
I certainly like to perform just by myself and getting together with other people and performing too. But it's really fun to play in front of others that will appreciate what you have to offer.
I think it's important. That otherwise you don't have any sense of whether what you're doing is effective, really. I mean, and,
Mm-hmm.
and like you were saying about the online streaming stuff and all that, it's not the same kind of connection as when you're live in front of people. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's like looking in the mirror, when you do that. Like, okay, how am I really, it's also a self test. I feel like sometimes, like, how am I really doing? Can I actually do this? And can I connect with people with what I'm doing? So, but,
Yeah, yeah, it's a treasure though to be able to work with this. With I work, it's play. For me, it's playing now. I get to play
mm,
music and whatnot, and I'm not being in the business and having to think, I have to over here. I have lots of fans. I don't have a lot of fans. I don't work in terms of I'm trying to expand my fan base. I just if they come, that's great, and if they want to hear what I have
yeah,
to hear, they
cool.
have to play. That's fine. And Frank Zappa actually said this. He said I like playing music because I like to hear what I'm playing. I enjoy what I'm doing, and if you like it too, then come to the concert. And if you don't, that's okay. And
Yeah,
a lot of people liked what he did, and he was able to to work in that. He was a game changer too. He really did a lot of going in front of the House committee and talking about stuff that they were trying to manipulate the music scene as. Not to get too much involved with his stuff, but this is how I what I love to do. Any kind of creative too. It's not just music, but painting and drawing and writing poetry. And that's what I'm working a little bit now more with getting deeper in my own songwriting, finding these things that I'm doing with how that looking at some of the songs I've written in the past and said, well, where do I feel is good about this, and then what needs to be changed, and what have I brought onto this song or whatever that doesn't seem to really match what my intention was for the song. Even though sometimes writing a song at the beginning you don't really have an intention, and then sometimes it'll just start to appear. It says, oh, I see what this song is about, and then that's when songwriting process for me is really start it, and then in the middle section is kind of try to work phrases and stuff, work the song to where it actually makes a little sense to me. And I know that when I'm playing those songs, I can connect a little better with the audience. And then when I'm playing songs that I'm not really sure about them, it doesn't. I know I could see that now where it's not fitting, where it is fitting.
I don't know. I love your solo CD. That's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm liking that too nowadays. Although I haven't listened to it in quite a while, because that was sort of like a time frame for me. I finished that about 7 years ago, and I think I moved into something else now, musically. So, again, albums or CDs and stuff like that, they're kind of timestamps for the performers, and then you can always look back on them. I'm sure the Beatles or their first albums, they may have never listened to their first albums 4 or 5 years later. Says, boy, there was huge, vast difference between their earlier music and then what they were doing later on. And that's a perfect example of watching a band progress. Or like Pink Floyd too, same thing.
Yeah. We were seeing that last night. Like, of course, I saw Roger Waters' concert last year, so it was interesting to see a more of a Pink Floyd centric experience. Yeah, I was really impressed by that. Like, speaking of a band that blows your mind, Pigs on the Wing definitely were there for me.
Yeah. And they, you know what, they were really so well attuned to what they were doing. Is I was thinking they could probably do, if they had original material, that band could just be an original band doing their own stuff and not just Pink Floyd stuff, which I'm sure that would be taken into consideration. I mean, it would be cool to see something like that happen.
It's different worlds. Yeah.
But maybe they might not get as many people to show up.
Well, that's
everybody was there to hear Pink Floyd.
The Pink Floyd experience, yeah.
But their musicianship was just tops.
It was perfect, yeah. That drummer, I was just I couldn't even believe it. I was like, I think they gave Pink Floyd like this punk edge that I couldn't ignore. I just loved it, yeah. But the drummer had a lot to do with it, I thought.
Yeah, and the bassist was good too. They were right
on. Just everyone. There was no one was wasted in that lineup. They were all top notch.
Yeah.
Anyway, anything else you wanted to talk about?
I'll just say, if you're a musician, or if you're listening to this and you have a desire to really learn or really express yourself, you can go deep, and that's you. That's your creative self. For me, my life has always kind of been centered around wanting to create something, music, art, anything that you kind of find that. And it really helps and breaks loose of some of the stuff that the muck that we go through in our daily lives. Is if you have something, you got to pick up a piano. I'm gonna say pick up a piano. But I have a piano back here that I just every morning I would sit up and I'll just sort of play the piano. I don't really know what I'm doing sometimes. I don't know if I'm playing the right chords and this and that, but I could just, this piano's been around the longest in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Pick up that, or pick up your journal. Doing a journal is great. If you can just do some writing, anything that has that creative flow is really a healing thing. Music is a great healer.
I agree.
Great healer. So maybe just leave it with that.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I just want to say it's an honor talking to you, knowing you, being part of the music community that we're part of here in Corvallis. And I wish you luck with Arlene, and I hope maybe we can work together at some point. We can't be strangers.
No.
So
sure, yeah.
But it's been a long pandemic, so hopefully we can all be around each other more.
Yeah, come out of it with actually I think there's maybe a little more depth to us now after the pandemic. Somehow it's changed a lot of people's perceptions.
I think so. I felt that from that band last night, that the absence of being able to do something made them more passionate about performing for people. And I hope, I can learn from that myself. Like, wow, this is when you're really all the way committed to being passionate. This is what the results can be.
Okay.
All right. Well,
thank you for the opportunity to do this.
Oh, absolutely.
It's been very fun and very open.
Yeah, I can't believe how much fun I'm having doing this. Just
you sound like it.
Yeah, I feel like it's the ultimate honor to give somebody else a chance to talk and for me to listen to them. So, and that's what we did today. And for the fans out there or anyone listening, this has been Musicians Viewpoints. And if you want to send me a sound clip to play at the end, I'll put that on an MP3 if you want.
Of me playing music?
Yeah, something if you want to share it on the podcast at the end.
Yeah, I can send you something.
Cool.
I'll have to send you something later on. So
that's fine. Yeah, no, this won't be up for probably a week or so.
All right, great, Kevin.
Okay, David. This has been Musicians Viewpoints, and thanks for listening, everyone.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a great interview. Thanks, David. And now we leave you with David's song, Such a Fool. He started writing it more than 50 years ago, and here it is. He sent it to me just the other day. It's awesome.
Come unto me, ecstasy in silence, my love's release. Strum my heart in your disguise, the dance that brings such peace. Inside my willing breath, I feel the pulse of innocence illuminate the elegance that runs you in my mind. Such a fool. Show the game you brought for me and tether it around my heart. wonder that I see you be forever a place to start. Released inside your lucid eyes, the seeds of faith not compromised. I stand before thee realized the fullness of your grace. Such a fool. Resurrect my innocence and drown me in your ocean of light. And flood me with the boldness of your passion. This love ignites. I know you feel in the depth of me, beyond the blindness I can see what holds the will eventually. There's nothing left to say. Such a fool.